in the prayer room, just opening yourself up to God, in addition to what you were already doing at home by yourselves. And so we've had a time of opening up. But now as summer's coming, and we're going outdoors, and we're going to be walking and in the yard and stuff like that, and we'll be seeing our neighbors more. And we'll be at the beach and camping and bumping into strangers sometimes, and we'll be visiting family some of us haven't seen in a long time. And so we'll be engaging outward. So after opening up, we're going to be engaging outward a little bit. And in particular, it seemed like it was a good time to talk about that, because as we do that, one of the things we've been learning in John is that we are different from the world. Jesus makes that very clear. He talked about what would happen if the world hates you, and to remember that he warned us about that ahead of time. So when we notice that as we bump into the world, that we're not the same, and we're not quite sure how to handle that in a world that wants everybody to sort of just be tolerant and just get along no matter what. So the series that we're going to be starting with in a couple weeks is called Engaging with Incompatible Ways of Thinking. How do we engage when the way people are thinking just actually doesn't even work with ours? How do we still engage in that context? I know a lot of us have struggled with that. How do we not tune out or shut up, but we actually engage, listen, and share? And so Scott, Matt, Jody, Randy, and myself will be talking about our experiences and what we've gleaned from the scriptures about how to do that and manage that well. And then in the fall, we'll be drawing in. We'll be moving from engaging out to drawing in. And should the Lord give us souls over the summer, we'll be able to draw them in to community. But it's important that we form our own community so that we have a space for them to do that. And so we've spent a little time making sure that you have a way to socialize, and coffee here. We're going to keep on doing that. We did a Table Sunday a little while ago. Our picnics in the park are a chance for you to engage a little bit more. We'll return to Table Sundays in the fall. We want to make sure that we're building lots of community here. And in particular, COVID has ravaged our house groups. I mean, it has been nearly impossible to meet in ways that we find meaningful. And so when we come back in the fall, we want to open up our homes and invite others into them, both those of us in the body and maybe those that we've drawn in as well, and have a time of fellowship throughout the week. So we'll go from opening up in the spring and to engaging out to drawing in the fall. Now, I want to do a review, so let's get to the review bit. So I have a question for you. See what's in those memory banks. Do you remember anything from the series, from any sermon at all? So I want you to see if you can remember that. And what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a moment to think about that. And then I'm going to have you share in groups of, say, 5 or 6, however that seems to work out. I will help you split into groups. But I'm going to have you share one thing you can remember. It could be a lesson, it could be a verse, it could be a joke, it could be a story, it could be anything at all. And it is a fair bit to remember back because we've been doing this for over a year. So if you're struggling a little bit, that's totally fine. But see if you can remember something. If you're stuck, you can flip through your book, the Bible, the Gospel of John. You can flip through that book and see if that twigs anything inside of you. Let me set up the groups a bit. So I'm going to have alternate rows turn and face the row behind them and see if we can form groups that way. If you guys can come up, that would work. And then you guys can turn and face Ron and Deb. This would be a lovely group, however that happens. You can join, that'd be a Lord. Could you join this group over here? You have to go. Okay. What would work here is if you guys come with you guys turn and face people behind you. You can try to form groups of 5 or 6 if you can. And then you guys turn and face people behind you. And then Yeah, so he told me I could move it back. Oh, yeah, he told me I could move it back so that I I could move a little bit more, just because I'm going to be interacting with that. But it's really loud, I can't say. Okay. Shoot, sorry. Was your headphones on? They can.
Yeah, because it's pt2, so but you say do.
Okay.
Everything's
Okay. So then, just take a minute to make sure everyone has had a chance to share. Take a minute to make sure everyone has had a chance to share. Just take 30 seconds to finish up your conversations and look this way. Okay. Was that enough time for most people to share? Does anybody want to beg me for more time? I'm only taking one more minute. I'm being begged for one more minute. So take one more minute to wrap up what you were saying. You guys don't need that long. Okay, and if you could look this way. But he sounds like he's done. I can hear him. Okay, well, that was nice to be begged for more time. If you really need to keep talking, you can keep talking, but I'd love to hear 5 things from this group, from this larger group, that people could remember. So just 5 highlights, maybe one from each of 5 groups, something like that. Anybody want to wave their hand? Jim Williams, can you yell? Yeah, I know you can speak loudly.
Jesus is the light of the world.
Jesus is the light of the world.
Still in the barn when we talked about that.
Yeah, you remember being in the bar and talking about Jesus being the light of the world? Yes. Good, yes. Mark. People are counting. Woo, good choice. Mark, yeah. Oh, I can't quite hear Mark.
Foot washing of the disciples, he's washing their feet, and Peter first refusing, and then wanting to be washed completely, and then he's just your feet are okay.
Just your feet is okay, yes. That's right. What did you get out of just your feet is okay?
Well, to me, I made the connection. Peter was always putting his foot in his mouth, so
Nice. So just clean the feet. It'll be better for oral hygiene, actually. Nice. Okay. So that's two, three more. Yes, Anna Grace.
There was, I can't remember who did the sermon, but there's a note saying, like, Peter said, I would die for you, and then Judas replied, I don't need you to die for me, I need you to live for me.
Wow. Yeah, powerful stuff, right? I need you to live for me. Yeah. Two more? Yeah.
Jesus honored Mary Magdalene for the sacrifice of the ointment on his feet,
Yeah.
anointing of the burial, the lowly one.
Yeah. So it was an amazing sacrifice, and Jesus honored that sacrifice. Yeah. Okay. One more.
I found out how poorly I take notes.
Okay. Okay.
I thought I would never forget this, but I've clearly forgotten a lot. But Scott spoke on March 27th, that part I got.
Okay.
But he was talking about listening. He heard Jackie Pullinger speak in Holy Trinity Brompton in London on John 14, and he was just saying that she encouraged everybody to have soft hearts and hard feet.
Right.
And Scott said he feels that so often we may get soft hearts, but we also have soft feet.
Right. Yes, that's right. Or even worse, hard hearts and soft feet. Yeah. Great, you guys, so much amazing stuff. You know what? I do have a handout actually that we will look at to refresh even more of your memory, so that even more of it is stuck in. And let me just grab it. Okay, good. So we'll get that handed out right away. So my wife, who is passing things around here, is kind of a John Mark Comer fan. I don't know if you know him. He's a former pastor from Portland, Oregon. And I want to tell you why John Mark Comer bugs me, okay? Because this is why. I agree with everything he says. It's just this. It's just that I've always, for many years, I've always felt that way. I think I've lived the way he's describing. He just bugs me because he says it better than I do. And so she's been kind of like, she's read his most recent book. She's into his podcast, or one of his podcasts right now. And I've been kind of resisting it. But yesterday I caved because I figured, well, I should probably get off my high horse and give up. And so I did. And actually, I'm going to quote something that he said in reference to what we're doing here today. He talked in that first podcast about following a rabbi. And he talked about how it would have been a similar practice to following a philosopher if you were in ancient Greek period. But following a rabbi in the Jewish culture in the the first century Palestine, you would have traveled with them from town to town, walking on dusty roads. Now, actually, I want to talk about knowing here, what it means to know what the rabbi is saying. At worship waiting and weighing on Friday, even David Roos was talking about how, there's a Greek understanding of knowing, and then there's a Jewish understanding of knowing. In the Greek understanding of knowing, or Hebrew. Way of understanding. That's fair enough. I'm being corrected. Hebrew, broader than just Jewish, because it would have gone back right to the Hebrew language and the Hebrew culture. So there's a Greek and there's a Hebrew understanding of knowing. And the Greek understanding of knowing is a little bit like our understanding today. If you can answer questions on a test, you know it. But if you think about it, if a preacher tells you what's in the Bible, they know it, it's true. But if they're living it, they know it in another way entirely. And that's the Hebrew understanding of knowing, is to be experiencing it. And so during that time when you're following your rabbi, you're trying to know your rabbi. And you're walking with him from place to place, and you're eating with him and sleeping beside him, and you're there when he wakes up in the morning, and you're even trying to imitate the way he talks, his tone of voice and stuff like that, because you really want to know what he knows. And so there was an expression that disciples might say to each other. They might say, may you be covered with the dust of your rabbi. And so the image is, as you're walking from town to town, place to place, the roads don't have asphalt and they're not even cobblestoned. They're probably just dirt roads most of the time. And the image is not that you be covered with the dust of the people that are strangers that you run into along the road, because you would be kicking up the dust, but beside them they'd be kicking up the dust beside you, or even other disciples. But you would be so close to your rabbi that at the end of the day you would be covered in his dust, that he would have just kicked up enough dirt that it would be all over your feet and all over your thighs and all over your calves. You'd be covered in the dust of your rabbi. And I think that's kind of what we want too, is we want to be close enough to Jesus that we are covered in his dust. So it's like if we were walking alongside him, we may be walking so close to him that if we were physically walking alongside him, we would be covered in his dust. I don't know about you, but I've sure wished that I could live at the same time as Jesus, that I could have actually been a disciple, or at least heard him preach, right? That would have been amazing to actually see him. But in a way, we have been really delving deep into who he was and what he said, as we've been going at great length through the Gospel of John. And we have these stories that we've been looking at. So what I've done is I've created this little handout. And what this is a series of snippets from our sermons, or at least about 20 of them, that we've given over this time, and I've kind of strung them together into 4 paragraphs. So I'll read the first 2 paragraphs, and then I'll get some of you to read the rest. Do you know me? The Gospel of John. All legitimate historians agree Jesus of Nazareth was, or we would say is, the most influential person in Earth's history. In this series, we've looked intently into Jesus' most famous biography, the Gospel of John. This biography boldly answers several questions about Jesus. What follows are snippet summaries of many of our sermons. Who is he? Jesus is light, thank you, Jim Williams, extinguishing darkness. Jesus and the Father are one, so he is not a way to the Father, he is the way to the Father. Also, as co-creator, he is the ultimate healer. Somebody read the next paragraph there.
What does he ask? He wants a radically close relationship with you, but is furious at the clutter you've built up in your life. He doesn't want you to have a divided heart, but to cultivate your love for him and act on that love. Meditate on his words, accept his peace, hear his voice, and seek the Father's glory.
Next paragraph, somebody.
How does he want his followers to behave towards others? Do things his self-sacrificing way. His self-sacrificing journey is the goal. So empathize with others in their losses. Serve others and love others. Your love for your fellow followers will be your most distinctive characteristic.
Somebody read the last paragraph.
What will this life be like? The Father will provide abundant life that starts today, and you will do even greater things than Jesus did. you will have the opportunity to tell someone that Jesus healed you. Take it. If the world hates you, he wants you to remember that the same thing happened to him. And he warned you ahead of time. In response, don't accept the world's judgment. Accept Jesus' instead.
So just take a moment, ponder. That's a whole lot. Just take a moment, ponder, and see what stands out for you. If you've got a pen, you might highlight it. If you don't have a pen, you could crease it on that spot. Look for something that shines, that the Holy Spirit may be even pointing out to you. Just look for something that jumps out. So I have a couple of challenges for you today. And one is to respond to whatever has jumped out at you. If it was something to do with his identity, it may be that you're to reflect on that, meditate on that. If it was something to do with what he's asking you to do, maybe you should go do that. If it was something about the life that he has said it will be like, maybe ask yourself whether or not your life is like that. Is there something on your end that you need to change so that it is? Or something on his end? If it is on his end, then we ask for it because it's a promise. But think a little bit about how you could take what you've just picked out and live it out. Either by remembering it, meditating on it, or acting on it, or asking for it. So I'm going to give you a moment to just think about that. So here's my second challenge. So we can't physically walk with Jesus, but John 16, Jesus said to us that it would be better for us if he went away. Because if he goes away, he sends. And I'm hearing all different kinds of words because the word paraclete has been translated so many different ways, right? Advocate, what did you say? Comforter? Comforter, yeah. Helper, right? Intercessor, many different ways of understanding what Jesus is saying here. But he certainly is, the Holy Spirit is certainly somebody that advocates for us and helps us and comes alongside. The Message translates the word as friend. It's interesting because he says, much as you imagine that it would be better if I stayed, the reality is that it's better if I go. It's this comforter, this advocate is so good, it's better than walking alongside Jesus. It's better than being covered with the dust of Jesus' sandals at the end of the day. It's better than that. That's what Jesus said. And one simple way in which it's better that we can understand is that if you can imagine if Jesus was still physically walking with us today, there'd only be so many disciples that could actually walk alongside him that close. And we have an estimated 2.6 billion Christians on earth right now. It is better that we do it this way. And so he says, 14 now, the friend, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send at my request, will make everything plain to you. How many things? Everything. The Holy Spirit then is our rabbi. He will make everything plain to you. And Jesus says elsewhere, he does not speak on his own. Instead, in this next line, he will remind you of the things that I have told you. That's how he makes everything plain. So we can be Jesus' disciples. We can be covered with his dust at the end of the day. And this is the way. But you know, a lot of times we kind of think the way we do it is getting just a little shot and then we're done, right? So you come to church and you get a little shot and then you're done, and maybe do your morning quiet time shot and you're done. All of those things are helpful, and as I'll say in a moment, I think they're necessary. But to be covered with the dust of our rabbi is to walk alongside him, is to go where he goes, wherever that is to fall asleep with him, is to wake up with him, is to eat with him, is to be with him all the time. That's what this thing of following Jesus means. And so how do we do that? Well, the fact is the Holy Spirit can be with us. And somebody would argue is, if you've accepted him, right? But a lot of times we have things inside of us that are shutting him out. A lot of things that are resisting him because we don't quite know how to work with him. So my challenge to you is this: hang out with the Holy Spirit every day, just like they're your rabbi. So as you're driving on the highway this summer, invite his presence in. As you're swimming in the lakes this summer, getting refreshed, invite him in. As you're waiting in line at the border or customs or even just at a store, invite him in. As you're working in the yard, as you bump into your neighbor, invite him in. As you're soaking up the sun, soak up the Son of God. Soak up the presence of the Holy Spirit. Now, having said that, I got to say, I tried that a number of years ago and it didn't work. I read that great book, Practice in the Presence of God. I know the Bulls have talked about an amazing book, which has the same idea that I just talked about, but it didn't work for me. And I know why it didn't work for me now. You see, because I couldn't do all the things I just challenged you to do, because I wasn't spending enough concentrated time when I was undistracted, soaking him up and being with him. And then I developed a practice of committing every day to spending time with the Holy Spirit with no distractions before everything starts, and soaking him up. And that didn't work right away, but in time I found that when I was driving down the street, I automatically invited him in because it felt good and I knew how, and the muscles were all there. When I was standing in line at the grocery store, I just automatically just made it a meditation time on the Lord and inviting the Holy Spirit in because I love him and he comes. But I needed to develop the muscles so that I could do it. So what I'd like to do is just spend a little bit of time right now, and you're probably getting used to me doing this. We could spend a little bit of time right now. Let's just kind of invite him in just right now. Oh, Holy Spirit, thank you for being here. Now come flood our bodies with your presence. But we're not used to, some of us are not used to experiencing you. Would you open our hearts up to you? Lord, we're not after a particular experience, but we are after you, Lord. Would you come in and would you flood our bodies? Lord, you said that our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit. Would you come and flood this body? Would you come from the top of our heads to the tip of our toes? Would you come on our hearts and our legs? Our hearts so that we would love you. Our legs so that we would follow you and take the gospel. And our heads so that you would rule us. let me encourage you, if you are feeling something, that can sometimes be helpful. So if you're feeling a tingling or an electricity anywhere, invite more of that. Ask the Lord to come into that part of the body and the next adjacent part of the body and all of your body. Invite him to come. You're feeling a thought, or seeing a word, or seeing a picture, ask the Lord what that is. Follow it up. Lord, what are you saying? Okay. I'll ask you to bring your attention back to here. How was that? Okay, this is what I'm going to have you do. So, this is what happens when we do this. Some of you go right there. You're like, I know this space. I go right there. Some of you you struggle, or you're like, I hate it when pastors do this, and you're kind of like, or some of you actually are like, oh, I remember this used to be me, and whatever, we lost it for some reason. It can be helpful to hear other people's stories, so I'm going to actually get you to go back into those same groups again that you were before, and share what it was like for you, and I'm asking you to be honest. So I don't want you to make stuff up. You don't need to tell us about how distracted you were the whole time. We're all distracted. That's just true. We're all distracted all the time. But when you try to just let the Lord in, what was it like for you? And it just can be interesting. Sometimes you discover that actually somebody has an experience that you never realized was the Lord. When they say it, you're like, oh, that's the Lord. And sometimes you realize that you're very unique and your experience of the Lord is unlike anybody else's. That's true for all of us too. Because while he does the same thing over and over and over again, he always teaches us again a little differently, because he wants that language to be just for us, so that it can never be packaged, never be sold. It's just our love language between him and us. So I want you to turn to the people in the group beforehand, that you were in beforehand, and I want you to share what that experience was like for you. Okay, I need to set things.
It's okay.
What did I do with the music?
I don't know if I remember. I'll wait till you're done.
Yeah, I'm just gonna give me 1 minute more. Just take a minute to finish up your conversations. Okay, and if you could look this way. It can be a mix of things. It was really neat to see people kind of go into their groups, kind of pause, and now you're sharing, which is great. I'm assuming you weren't all talking about the weather, that we were talking about this. Sometimes when you say it, it gets clearer, right? Sometimes when you say it to somebody else, you understand a little bit better, so that can be a real plus. You can keep talking. I'm going to sing with Tom, and that's going to conclude our service today.
Not today.
Hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. Darkness veils his lovely face, I rest on his unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil. On Christ, the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. His oath, his covenant, his blood supports me in the well-made flood. stand before the throne. On Christ, the solid rock I stand. All other ground is a sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. His oath, His covenant, His blood supports me in the whelming flood. When all around my soul gives way, you are then my hope and stay. When you shall come with trumpet sound, oh, may I then in you be found, dressed in your righteousness alone, faultless to stand before your throne. On Christ, the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is a sinking sand. It's just sinking sand. Just sinking sand.
If anyone wants prayer, come on up to the front, and I'm sure there'll be people here who'd be glad to pray for you. Anything else?
Go in peace.
Go in peace. Go and love on each other. Enjoy the rest of your day.